I've spent more mornings on the bayou than I can count. Most of them start the same way. Dark, the water flat as a pane of glass, air so thick you could wring it out like a towel. My pierogi's nothing fancy, just a beat-up fiberglass hull that I patched up with resin and duct tape. But it glides quick and quiet, perfect for running traps, trolls, and snag lines before the sun's up. That morning though, it felt kinda weird. The swamp wasn't alive like it normally is. No frogs tuning up, no gar breaking the surface. Not even the skeeters whining in my ears. Just heavy, sticky silence pressing down like a wet blanket. I pushed off anyway, deciding I was done wasting time and worrying about nothing. My paddle dipped, carrying me and the sound riding the still water. Cypress knees rose out of the black pools like bones. Spanish moss drooped low enough to brush against my shoulders when I slid under the limbs. The world felt revolting, as if the bayou itself didn't want me out there. Folks around here tell stories. My granddad used to sit me on his porch and talk about spirits that live in the swamp. Women who drowned and never found their way out. Old Cajun hunters who never quit chasing game. Things with eyes like coals that stayed in the den waters. I'd always just laugh it off, even when I was little. You grow up here and you learn real quick what's a tale told over beer and what is actually worth locking your door for. But that morning, paddling deeper into the fog, I caught myself thinking about those stories again, and that might have been my first mistake. The mist was bad, a lot thicker than normal. I could barely see past the bow, and every time I glanced behind me, the shoreline was gone. Just me, the water, and a wall of white. I kept my head down, shoulders working away, paddles slicing through in this rhythm that I've pretty much done my whole life. Trap after trap, one line to the next. I had some fishing lines out behind me, looking for a little bonus from the depths. Then I heard a sound, another paddle I thought, soft and steady, keeping in time with mine. I stopped, and the sound stopped too. Maybe an echo, I guess, sound bouncing off the cypress. Except echoes don't keep a beat like that. It'll match you, sure, but this one was almost mimicking me. It was the exact same time, or as close as it could get. So I eased forward, hard knocking my shit around. It made the paddle hard to hold. A shape floated in the fog maybe 50 yards back. It could have easily been another fisherman, at least that's what I thought at first. Plenty of old boys run their lines out here too, but as I continued to stare, I saw that the boat was sat deep, half sunk. Either an old-ass model or it was heavy with something. It had the look of something pulled out of a barn after 20 seasons of rot. Red paint peeled off the sides in these long strips. I cupped my hands around my mouth and called out. I got no answer, and the boat didn't drift any closer, but it didn't drift away either. Just hovered there in the fog like it was tied to me. And that was when the silence actually broke. Not with an answer, not with a laugh or a curse, but with the sound of something heavy sloshing in one of my traps. It was a relief, honestly, and brought me back to my job. The sound had come from up ahead, maybe 20 yards from where I dropped the trap earlier the day before. A hard, wet thrashing, it was something big. I let my paddle rest against my knees and listened as I floated over. I didn't like turning my back to that other boat though, but money's money, and those traps feed my family. I paddled on, cutting towards the cypress where I knew the first buoy would be found. My gut said to keep quiet, so I didn't make a sound, just dipped my paddle and took a breath. The trap was half on the bank. Whatever was in there was fighting like hell. I leaned over and hauled it in, the rope rough in my hands. The cage broke the surface, heavy and dripping, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't crawfish. It was a catfish, big as my thigh, gut split wide open from gill to tail. The thing was still alive though, thrashing, but its belly was cleaned out, neat as if a butcher had done it. Eyes bulging, mouth working with the air, blood swirling into the water like oil. I dumped the cage, hard thumping, the fish rolling belly up before sinking. My traps are small, made for crawfish, not something of that size. Somebody had definitely put it there. Somebody was messing with me. I looked back and that red boat had now drifted closer, maybe 30 yards now. There was zero evidence of them paddling over, but there they were, still water all around. I cursed under my breath and dug the paddle deep, heading for the next line. The air seemed thicker now, as if the fog itself had some kind of weight. I tried to shake the nerves to tell myself it was some drunk running an old boat, maybe passing out in the stern. That would explain the silence, and that would explain why it shadowed me so perfectly. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was actually deliberate. The second trap came up light, empty. Not just empty though, cleaned. No bait, no mud, no crawfish remains, just scrubbed wire. Whoever was tailing me wasn't stealing, they were erasing it. I spun in my seat and shouted across the water. "Hey, you screwing with me?" The boat drifted, fog swallowing up its shape until it looked like a shadow painted on white canvas. Of course, I got no answer. I raised my voice, even angrier now. "This ain't funny! Show yourself!" Silence, then a faint paddle dipping, once, twice, slow as a heartbeat. That was enough for me. I don't spook easily, but something about it, something about the patience, it kind of set me off. I turned the bow toward home and paddled hard. The boat didn't chase me, at least not exactly, it just kind of followed. Always there, always the same distance behind, never in any kind of hurry. Half a mile of this and my arm started burning. Sweat soaked through my shirt, but the morning was cool. The cypress stood like rows of sentries, roots twisting under the water. The fog wrapped me tighter, and the bank seemed to get further away every stroke I took. Yeah, baby. I told myself not to look back, but I did, and I wish I hadn't. The boat was only 15 yards away now. I could see the waterlogged wood, red peeling down to gray pulp. The bow sat heavy in the water, and inside through the mist, I thought I saw the outline of something, at least what appeared to be a very large man crouched in the boat. My chest tightened. I dug the paddle deeper, frantic now, splashing more than actually gliding. Every fisherman knows, don't panic in the swamp. Panic makes you sloppy, but I couldn't help it. The sound behind me, that drip, drip, paddle sliding, was steady as my heartbeat now. I veered toward a strand of cypress, figuring I could cut through a narrow channel and lose him, hopefully. My bow wedged into the tunnel of roots, branches brushing in my face, water shallow and choked with duckweed. Hard paddling, I shoved forward, praying that the other boat couldn't actually follow me. Halfway through, my paddle struck something. Rope. I leaned down and pulled it up, thinking maybe a trot line that somebody had left. It wasn't a trot line. It was one of my traps. But that wasn't where I'd set it. This was deeper into the cut than I'd ever go. The cage was wired shut with twine that definitely wasn't mine either. Inside, baby gators floated belly up, split open like that catfish, clean cuts, arranged in this nice, neat little row. I couldn't make sense of it. But then came the sound of wood bumping behind me at the mouth of the cut. I looked over my shoulder and there it was, that boat blocking the exit, settled quiet in the fog. I froze. No figure in it, no man, no shape, just the boat drifting without any sound, bow aimed straight for me like a gun barrel. The air around me became heavy and I swear I could hear water lapping against the hull, as though it was sinking and floating at once. My hands shook the paddle, and for the first time in my life, I thought maybe those old stories were actually true. I shoved the trap back under, cut the rope with my knife, and paddled deeper. Branches clawed at my arms, moss dragging like fingers. My boat scraped roots and threatened to tip. The channel dead-ended at the cypress stand, no way through, no way out, just black water and a steady bump of roots. I turned now, desperate, knife in hand and paddle in the other. The red boat drifted closer now, bow nosing in the shallows, fog rolling away just enough to show me what was actually inside. At first I thought it was a pile of netting, but then it shifted. A stack of my traps, twisted, bent, and filled with the same neat piles of gutted fish and crawfish. And tucked amongst them, boots that were torn, shirts torn too, and a hat that I recognized, the belongings of a local trapper and fisherman. The boat rocked and something in the bottom exhaled, wet and deep. I swear to God I felt the air move against my face, even across the water. That was when I lost it. I swung the paddle hard and smashed it into the side of the cypress, trying to make some kind of noise, trying to fight the silence with anything human. Just leave me the hell alone! The water between us rippled now, though I hadn't moved. The surface split, bubbles rising, and something slid beneath my boat now, rocking it once, twice, as if it had a hand and reached up from the black to test its weight. But nothing had come out from the other boat though. Whatever rocked me had already been in the water. I sat back on the seat, unsure of my next move. Death felt certain in this moment. As I looked around the area, I took note of that man again, massive now among the dogwood. That was it. I guided my boat around the other and slipped back through the cut, back to the main water, left all that behind me. As I slipped through the tangles, the man lurched into the water's edge and pointed at the traps that I had in my boat. It all kind of clicked. I tossed him in the water and out of the way I came until my arms gave out. By then, I was well away from the guy in his boat now. I sat there shaking, paddle across my knees, knife slick in my hand. The boat rocked underneath me, soft and steady. My chest felt hollow now, every breath a pain. I kept glancing around the fog, waiting for that one boat to slip back into my view. But the water calmed, no ripples, no bubbles, still as black glass. I told myself I need to move, to just move, paddle home, tie off, and don't look back. My arms were rubber though, but I forced myself into rhythm, one stroke, then another. No frogs, no gar, no herons flapping out of the mist, just me and the sound of my paddle again. By the time the dock came back into view, the sun had started to break through, pale light slicing through the fog in ribbons. My legs shook as I stepped out, boots slipping on the wet plank. I was just happy to be back on solid ground. I tied off, climbed the bank. I tied off, climbed the bank, and didn't breathe easy until the trees gave way to gravel road again. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd carried something back with me. I kept my mouth shut, told my wife the lines came up light, nothing worth cooking, told my buddies at the bar that the fog had been thick as soup, nothing more. Nobody would have believed me anyway. Nobody believes in those old stories until they're actually out there alone, seeing it for themselves. But I will tell you this, I don't run traps before sunrise anymore, and I don't go out in the fog. That's where I'll hear it, that slow, patient dip of a paddle, keeping in time with mine. Everyone knows those cane fields are private land, miles thick with stalks and mud ditches, but it was Friday night in Opelousas, and we were 17 and stupid, which meant bonfires out in the rows sounded a lot better than sitting in somebody's mama's trailer drinking some lukewarm beer. We parked 2 trucks nose in off a dirt pullout, headlights angled down to hide the glow, and lugged some pallets out in the middle of the field. Cane stalks towered over us, 12 feet high, so thick that you couldn't see 2 rows over. It felt like walking into a green tunnel, the stalks rattling against each other in the breeze. I kept telling myself it was pretty normal, that creaking sound, but it carried strangely out in the dark. Especially when you live in the sticks, everything kinda does become normal. We lit the fire, flames jumping high, sparks hissing into the sky, and the cane hid it all from view. Everybody was loud, laughing, and music from somebody's speaker rattling. For the first half hour, it really was perfect. Just us, firelight on our faces, and cane swaying around us like the wall. I don't really know who noticed it at first, but it hit me when the noise in the rows didn't match the wind. Something chaotic. 1 row over, maybe 2, stalks bending and snapping slowly, like somebody thrashing over to us. I froze, beer halfway to my mouth. You guys hear that? Nobody wanted to admit it, but we all went quiet at once. The fire popped, song cut out, and there it was, clear as day. Crunch, snap, then nothing, a long pause, then again on the other side of us. We laughed it off. We had to. Somebody joked it was a farmer with a shotgun, and somebody else said some kind of feral hog, but nobody checked. We just forced a laugh and eyes darted into the rows. Then Tyler swore he saw a light, said there was a glow moving between the stalks way off. We piled more wood on the fire, like that light would actually make us safe. That was when the rows started closing in. Not really, but it felt like it. The canes were swaying heavily, rattling like bones. And I swear that I saw shapes in there, moving slow, keeping just out of sight. Every time we turned our heads, they would shift, always just beyond the fire's reach. Somebody cracked and threw a beer into the stalks, and silence quickly swallowed it up. No rustle of it landing, just kind of gone. Then came the chirp, just one, splitting the night air. It sounded like police. We scattered. Fire jumped, sparks flying as boots stomped the dirt. We charged for the trucks, all shoving through the rows, canes slashing at our arms, stalks closing in on every side. Behind us, we could still hear that thrashing. I tripped over a furrow and went face first into the dirt, came up spitting mud, ears ringing. When I looked up, I swore that I saw a figure standing there in the row. The problem was, he looked as tall as the cane stalks themselves, eyes blood red, staring down at me. All I could do in the moment was scream for help. And then he moved on top of me, all arms and legs, long as hell, dropping down from above. I rolled over and climbed to sprint, legs burning, the fire behind me spitting as everybody tore through the cane, completely like blind cattle. Stalks were whipping my face, it tore my shirt and caught one of my boots. All I could hear was the crash of us bolting, the steady whistle chasing behind. One long note. Okay, maybe it wasn't the police. My buddy screamed for us to go, go, go. It was Tyler, reduced to borderline tears now. The cane rows are straight, endless, like green hallways with no doors. You run and you swear you're not actually getting somewhere, but the walls never change, just more stalks, more dirt, and more shadows. I aimed for where I thought the trucks were, praying that I hadn't spun myself around. Behind me, I heard more footsteps, heavy, snapping stalks and not stumbling like we were, but moving fast almost like an animal. Whoever it was, they seemed to know the field and they weren't lost at all. I glanced back and almost lost my breath. A figure was coming straight down one of the rows, not weaving, not fighting the cane, just tall, skinny, and striding like the stalks leaned right out of his way. His head was tilted like before, cocked sharp to one side, arms slack at his sides. He wasn't running either. Hell, he didn't really need to. His legs ate up the ground steady and smooth. That whistle then cut out again, shrill, splitting my skull. I pushed harder, my thighs screaming at me. I clipped another root and nearly face-planted again, but thankfully caught myself, tearing my palms open on the branches. My blood smeared across the foliage, bright even in the dark. To my left, Kayla was screaming, stumbling, her blonde hair catching the firelight from somewhere behind us. She tripped too, hard, and I grabbed her arm and yanked her up quickly. We kept running, shoulders banging, but the sound of that thing or man seemed to be everywhere, always one row over, sometimes two, sometimes dead behind us. Where the hell are the trucks? Kayla sobbed. I don't know, just keep going. The rows bent around us, now indistinguishable. Every turn seemed to be the same. My lungs were raw, my legs were shaking, but stopping meant hearing that whistle over my shoulder again. It still came anyway. This time though, it was low, drawn out like a train horn underwater. Not one note, but two, a second voice seemingly answering somewhere further off. The group split. Some bolted left and some bolted right. I held tight to Kayla and cut straight, praying for some kind of headlights. My throat was salt and blood. My eyes were watered from the smoke and dust. Then, finally, I saw it, light through the canes. Headlights. I screamed and pushed Kayla forward, stumbling in with her. We broke through one of the rows and slammed into the dirt pullout. Trucks. Thank God. Except all the doors were wide open. Pallets were stacked up against the bumpers, beer cans lined on the hood like somebody had arranged them in these neat tiny rows. And the music, our speaker, was playing again, but slowed, warped, like the batteries were dying, voices dragging down into something monstrous. Something then cracked behind us. We turned and the stalks parted, snapping clean. And out he stepped, tall and covered in this black cloth. His head was still cocked, chin nearly touching his shoulder. His face, I never saw it clearly, just darkness and shadow. and he lunged at us. I grabbed Kayla's arm and shoved her toward the driver's side. We piled in, slamming doors, locks clicking. My hands shook so hard that I missed the keys twice before stabbing them into the actual ignition. My headlights flared, but the figure didn't move, just stood in the beam, head still cocked, striding back and forth. I threw it into reverse and the tire spun in the mud, spraying dirt, engine howling. The truck jerked backwards, slamming over something soft. I didn't look to see what it was. I cranked the wheel and gunned it forward, out onto the parish road, fishtailing out of that acreage. In the mirror, the firelight was shrinking, the cane swallowing it up. But that whistle was still carrying and the figure continued to patrol the field's edge. Kayla was now curled up against the door, sobbing, nails digging into my leg. I couldn't quite breathe right. I couldn't speak. My eyes locked on the rear view, expecting to see him running after us, that tall frame cutting down the middle of the blacktop, keeping pace. But the road behind stayed empty, just the dark trees flashing quickly by. I didn't slow until we hit town, until lights, houses, and people came back into view. We never told anybody, not really, just said the farmer chased us off, same as always, because who would truly believe the truth? But occasionally, late at night when I'm out in the yard smoking, I can still hear it, whistles through the backwoods. We didn't even go back for our stuff that night. We peeled out of the Cane Road like cowards, left Tyler's truck sitting open, music dragging, fire fizzling out. And by the time we circled back hours later with the sheriff, that guy or thing was gone. Deputies stomped around half the night, flashlights cutting through the rows, dogs straining on their leashes, but nothing. They called it kids drinking, maybe someone wandering off, case closed. But to those of us that were there that night, we know the actual truth. Here goes. I have a medical background and a certification that I rarely use, though I keep going back and paying to renew it. Anyway, I volunteered almost immediately thinking that I would help those that have lived through Katrina. That was not the case though. There was a few of us who were assigned once the water started to recede, to find houses that had dead bodies in them. If you've ever had to do body recovery, when it's been lying around in the heat and the water for days, sometimes even weeks at a time, you know the smell I'm talking about. It does sort of smell like any other dead carcass, but it's a lot worse. I can't explain it. Maybe somehow sweeter smelling. Anyway, the key to not vomiting when you smell them is a little bit of Vicks under and around the bottom of your nose. It doesn't keep all the smell out, but it's enough that you can at least tolerate the smell without actually vomiting. We had to go to each house and go inside in wading boots and look for bodies. Many of them washed out to sea, but some were still inside the houses that they'd lived in prior to the hurricane. If we found a body, we spray painted a big X on the outside of the house. This other guy and I have been doing it for a while now, and we got assigned to each other almost every single day. We got along for the most part, and he didn't vomit at the ones that had already been gotten to. One day though, we came up to this really old shack. And I say shack because it was pretty run down and in what had been a very bad neighborhood. Right away, I got chills down my spine. I knew there was something wrong. Not like find a body kind of wrong either, but chilling kind of wrong. New Orleans has certain areas that just give off these vibes. And to my understanding, there is still a lot of voodoo practiced in certain areas. Against everything that my body was screaming at me, I went inside. And the first thing that I could smell was a body. And the second thing was something almost earthy, mold-like. I looked at my partner, I'll call him Jay. He was white as a sheet. I could tell he was getting that same feeling that I was getting. It was obvious from all these weird bones hanging from the ceiling, and I'll bet money that they were cats. Something odd had been going down in the house, as well as these strange beads and carvings in bare wood in the walls. We went into what would have been the kitchen, and there, chained to a beam, was this older lady, or what was left of her. She had chained herself by the wrist to the beam, Her guts were falling out on the floor. The creepiest thing, though, was her face still looked as though she was alive and staring back at us. My skin started immediately crawling as the goosebumps spread over my body and my neck hair stood up. Suddenly, we both hear the most unearthly cackling noise that I've ever heard in my life, and my fight or flight kicked in. We both noped the fuck out of there and quickly painted an X on and literally ran to the next house. Now, I don't know if that older lady had practiced voodoo or whatever, but it scared the ever-loving shit out of me and still gives me nightmares to this day. The people I feel sorry for are the ones who actually had to come back and take that crazy lady out of there. Jay and I discussed it the night after we went back to the hotels north of there. He confirmed he heard the cackling too, but we both said it had to be the wind or something like that. Folks around Thibodaux say the old Bayou Bridge hums at night. I always thought it was bullshit. Metal struts flexing, water moving under the pylons, some trick of the sound. I'd heard it 100 times from old men at the bar, telling kids not to fish there after dark, and I guess, looking back now, I should have listened. I worked late, crawfish season running hard and couldn't sleep, so I grabbed my rod, yeah baby, and drove out, figuring a couple of hours on the water would calm me down nicely. It was near midnight, sky low with clouds, the bayou slick as oil. The bridge sat out past the last subdivision, one of those old 2-lane deals where the concrete's cracked and the rebar peeks through. No lights, no traffic, just water and black trees stretching on. And of course the hoodoo. I parked on the shoulder, hazards off, and walked out with my gear. My boots were echoing on the concrete, a hollow thump that made the place feel a little emptier. When I leaned over the side, the water smelled awful. Rotten vegetation, fuel, and fish. The kind of stink that sticks to your clothes. Between the smell and the click of my boots, I knew that I wasn't alone out there. I still set up, line whistling out, lure popping into the black water. The sound carried in every direction. I could see my lure, dabbed in this little glow in the dark paint, perfect for catfish. The first half hour, nothing. Just the drone of bugs and the occasional splash from something big rolling under. And then I did hear a hum. It wasn't loud, but damn, it was all I could hear now. Strong and steady like a diesel engine. At first I thought there was a boat coming, so I reeled in and looked, but nothing, just black water around me. The hum was seeming to rise out of the pylons, vibrating through my shoes and rattling my rod holders. And that's when I pulled in my first catch, but it wasn't a fish, it was a boot, waterlogged, slick, and heavy as stone, and when I pried it open, it stank like rot. Inside was hair, clumped, tangled, and all knotted up. It looked like braids. I dropped it in the dirt and my skin crawled, bile burning up my throat. Then I heard a splash under the bridge and it came again. Whatever it was, it had to be huge. Another splash rolled the water under the bridge, hard enough that I felt it in my feet. It may have even knocked the supports. I froze, rod still in my hands, line dripping slack. My eyes worked hard to catch anything out in the dark, but the bayou was just black skin stretching out, reflecting nothing, absorbing all. Whatever it was, it exploded out of the water maybe 10 feet out, right where my bait was. Hell no. I reeled in and stuffed my tackle back into the bucket. I wanted to be gone, off that bridge, back in my truck with the radio blasting and the heater on. I had no desire to dance with this thing. I bent over to grab the boot that I dropped and throw it back in the water. It had fallen against the barrier lip. The hair, or whatever it was still inside, wet and stringy. My stomach flipped. I used the tip of my rod to nudge it backward and then upright. And that's when I saw them. Hands. I swear to God, pale hands gripping the edge of the railing right next to me. They worked side to side, carrying a body that I couldn't quite see. Then another pair and another, all of them working these weird side angles, keeping themselves in the air. Who or where they came from, I have no idea. I staggered back, heart choking off my lungs. I could feel the bridge rocking back from the explosive displacement of the water below. They weren't climbing over though, not yet, just kind of holding on, dangling on to whatever was moving in the water below. I quickly backed away toward the truck, my bucket tipped, lures scattering across the concrete. The sounds seemed to almost wake them. One hand slammed over the railing, fingers crawling, nails screeching against the concrete, flaking away. Then they all started to fling themselves over, sick, pale folks that I'd never seen before. I bolted, running down the bridge toward my truck. My boots weren't echoing now, my lungs were burning. The hum seemed to chase me, louder and louder, like the whole structure was groaning and about to collapse. Halfway across, I risked a glance back. Those shapes were pulling up, shoulders, slick hair, faces half drowned, real creepy looking things. I couldn't quite count them, couldn't even look straight. The movement was really what got me though. It was almost effortless, and it should have been damn near impossible to just throw themselves over like that. It was cartoonish and terrifying at the same time. All right, get in the truck, I told myself. Don't look back, don't die out here. I hit the gravel shoulder, fumbling keys from my pocket, and I almost dropped them in the mud. My truck sat there, this black useless silhouette, until I finally got it fired up. I slammed the door, cranked the ignition, and floored it. In my rear view, the bridge shrank, just a shape in the night now, but I'll never forget what I saw. Bodies standing on the edge watching me, water dripping off them in these steady streams. Not climbing, not chasing, just hanging and swinging. The hum seemed to almost follow me all the way back into town. My teeth were rattling with it, my bones rattled with it too, and by the time I got home and killed the engine, it still was feeling it in my chest. I didn't go back and fish after that, and I haven't since, but here's one of the things that keeps me awake. A couple of days later, I heard some chatter at the bar. Some other boys went out there, drunk, talking big, and said they'd night fish off the bridge, and one of them never came back. The sheriff called it a fall, said he slipped, said the water carried him off, but whatever it was, old boy was gone and dead, and it made me feel some type of way. I drove by the bridge the next morning, and the boot that I pulled up was back on there, and I could see the braids hanging out of it. It scared me to see it, but I figured it got pulled up during the search for the missing guy or something. Whatever the case, it reminded me of stories my grandma used to tell us when we were kids, stuff about voodoo and black curses. It made me wonder what the purpose of that boot actually was. I probably should have just kept driving and forgot all about it, but 2 nights later I'm back out there, parked 100 yards off, lights killed, just watching the bridge. I couldn't help myself, curiosity killed, something in me wanted proof. The bayou was glass though, no traffic, no crickets, no nothing, just that bridge stretching empty across the black water. I threw that boot back in the water, thinking maybe it was the ignition, the thing that kicked this entire series of events into motion. I disturbed it, and now it was back at rest again. At least that was my theory. I don't fish it anymore. I don't even drive it, if I can avoid it. Me and my brother Cody had been hunting pretty much all of our lives. Our dad raised us on deer stands and duck blinds, so when we scraped together enough to rent a lease near the Arkansas line, it felt like damn near a rite of passage. 600 acres of pine, swamp bottoms, and cutover fields. The landowner swore that we'd have it to ourselves all season long. That first morning, we were up at 3, coffee strong enough to peel paint, rifles slung in the back of Cody's truck. The road in was rutted dirt, branches clawing at the sides of the cab. The gate was nothing but rusted wire and a bent T-post. The whole thing kind of felt forgotten, like nobody had set foot inside here in years, which, to us, was perfect. We parked alongside this logging trail and split off, Cody cutting north towards a creek while I took the ridge. The air was sharp, pine needles wet underneath my feet, fog hanging still. The woods had that heavy silence before dawn, where you feel like every single breath that you took has this kind of echo. I found a stand that somebody had built years back, half-rotten boards, nailed to a sweet gum, climbed up and settled in. I sat so still my legs went numb. Hours passed by, nothing moving but the squirrels around me. And then I smelled something, some kind of rot, thick, sour, turning my stomach. Not a dead deer, it was different, human or close to it. I slowly climbed down thinking a hog had died nearby or something and followed the scent. 10 minutes in, I found the first sign. A deer was strung up between two pines, gutted but not cleaned. Inside split, chest cavity hacked open with a dull blade. Meat left to sour out in the air. What stopped me cold wasn't the deer, it was the shotgun shell casing stuck into the bark right above it, wedged in almost like a calling card. And that's when I knew that me and Cody weren't alone out here. I froze, my breath becoming shallow, eyes sweeping the tree line. Whoever had left that deer hadn't just walked away, they'd wanted it to be seen. The casing wedged into the bark was super bizarre to me. I've never seen anything like it. I backed off slowly with my rifle raised, every step crunching deadfall. That stink continued to cling to me. My stomach turned, but I forced it down. Cody was half a mile north by the creek, and I needed to get to him now. I pulled my radio, not even static, just nothing. I hissed a curse and kept moving, ears straining for anything unnatural. As I continued to walk, I took notice of something. A man maybe, or what at least looked like one, maybe 50 yards off. I crouched, rifle snug in my shoulder. Through the fog, a shape moved between the pines. It was very broad and camouflaged. Yeah, definitely a man. He stopped dead and looked in my direction, then lifted something. A shotgun, and rested it casually across his shoulders. I ducked behind a trunk, mouth dry as dirt. I've been in the woods my whole life, but I've never felt hunted until right then. He whistled like a banshee, answered off by another a little further off. There wasn't just one of them. This guy was part of some kind of team. I turned south, moving fast and quiet, hoping to circle back toward my truck. My boots were slipping in the mud, clothes catching on briars, but I kept low, weaving through the tree rows until the guy faded behind me. And then I hit the second sign. Another deer, hung upside down this time, stripped to bone, hide nailed to a tree. Beneath it sat a rusted lawn chair, shotgun shells lined across the seat like trophies. That's when I knew that we'd stumbled onto something far worse than poachers. These weren't even hunters, they were squatters of some kind, claiming this land the way feral dogs claim a yard. And now we were the intruders. I quickly broke into a run. I didn't really care about noise anymore. I just needed to get to Cody. By the time I reached the creek, sweat was burning in my eyes. I spotted his blaze orange vest through the fog and nearly collapsed from relief. Jesus, man, I hissed, waving him down. Dude, we gotta go, now. He frowned at me. What the hell are you talking about? A crack of a branch cut him off, and we both spun round. Across the creek, maybe 30 yards out, a man stood, camouflage faded, clothes greasy, skin black with soot. He didn't move, just watched us, shotgun dangling from one hand. Then another man stepped out beside him, and another. Cody whispered to me, poachers? I shook my head. They ain't poaching, just wasting animals, dude. The first man raised his shotgun, slow barrel right at us. I yanked Cody by the vest and we bolted, crashing downstream, water splashing to our knees. Shots rang out, 2, 3, pellets tearing bark overhead. We ran like deer through thick pine, ducking branches, lungs burning. They weren't rushing. They didn't really need to. They were almost hurting us. We broke into a logging trail, gravel crunching underneath. Ahead, the truck. Parked crooked, doors wide. They've already been here. My gut sank. We slowed and put our rifles up. Something was glinting on the hood. Cody stepped forward, face straining white. It was his wallet, driver's license, all propped up against the windshield. Smiling photo lit by morning fog. The sound of boots came from behind us, heavy. We were outnumbered. I swung finger tight on my trigger, but there was nothing, just fog curling across the trail. I saw a lone figure and pulled the trigger, turned a tree limb into matchsticks. Cody lost it. He fired into the trees round after round, brass clattering at his feet, echoes thundering off the pines, but nobody cried out. Nobody fell. When the echo died, the silence then swallowed us next, and the fog pressed in a little tighter. Then from in the distance, a voice deep and steady. "Go on then." We didn't wait or question. We sprinted past the truck, straight down the trail towards the parish road, leaving our gear, leaving everything. I never even looked back, not even a glance. My ears were still ringing too hard to even hear if they followed us. By the time we finally hit Blacktop, we were half dead on our feet, mud up to our knees, hearts jackhammering. A local farmer found us 2 miles down. We flagged him with wild eyes and rifles shaking in our hands, and he drove us straight back into town without a word. The sheriff didn't believe a lick of it, called it wild hog hunters, and told us to lay off the whiskey. Said he checked the area the next day, but nothing but deer bones and empty shell casings. But we know what we saw. I know what I saw. There was men watching and whistling. It was almost like they'd been waiting for years for somebody to wander too far into their woods. We never went back, left the least money on the table, rifles in the closet, and told the landowner to just keep it. He didn't seem to ask too many questions, probably knew more than he ever told us. For weeks, Cody wouldn't even talk to me about it. He'd just shake his head, jaw clenched, eyes somewhere far off. But for me, I kept replaying it, every sound, every face smeared in ash, every whistle echoing in the fog. Once I thought I saw them in town, driving out of the gas station, all 3 of them sitting up in a row in a single bench seat of an old rusted out Chevy. They all seemed to stare at me as I fueled up. I still hunt, but Cody doesn't hunt anymore. Sold all his gear, got more into fishing and boating, more social sports. Me, I still get out in the swamp, but I go where it's open, mapped and trafficked. One backwoods run is far enough for this old boy.